some things were very consistent, and some things evolved. And people true to that scholarship will understand that evolution and that progression. And that's why we're true in a scholarly way to the concept that's being discussed, right? There should be a progression. For any discussion of an idea, there should be a progression. And when you find that progression, collect then everything that shows that progression. That's our job. And we have 3 outstanding scholars and followers of IWDM students. They're scholars and students. All of us are. So inshallah, with that being said, we'll start off with our great sister, Sister Aisha K. Mustafa, Imam Mikhail, and end up with Dr. Mubashir.
Assalamu alaikum. All praise is due to Allah. I want to congratulate the sectional imams on such a beautiful conference, a most successful conference, a most needed conference, an educational conference, and I've learned a lot from yesterday to today and looking forward to tomorrow. In my assessment of what I'm to address, for me, the way I put it is, Imam Muhammad left us a specific groundwork for how we are to address our issues. Not only our issues in terms of inside the masajids, but also our issues in terms of inside the United States of America, as well as inside our families, our African American families, as well as evolving us up out of the Nation of Islam concepts and to Al-Islam proper, and how did he do those things? I was in Chicago on Strong Island when they took the chairs out of Temple number 2 and told us we would have prayer and prostration on the floor. And watching the amazement on so many faces on, you want us to sit on the floor? You know, sisters in Chicago were known for dressing. You know, they would wear these coats on public transportation. So these sisters are known for dressing, and it took a minute for them to say, you want us to sit on the floor? And we actually went through a series of conversations in the Imam, some reprimands from the Imam. Yes, you sit on the floor, you put your head on the floor in prostration to your God. Imam Muhammad not only gave us methods in coming out of our history as descendants of slavery, descendants of Jim Crow law, evolving out of the Nation of Islam, which was really our womb, our cocoon, to give us a stable concept of who we were, addressing our identity crisis as African Americans. And yes, we had a real identity crisis. We didn't know what to call ourselves and how to go about being ourselves. We imitated from everything. If you were down south, you remember days when people had Manola cream. You couldn't be too dark. You had to try to bleach your skin white. You had these creams that were popular. And I picked up an old Ebony magazine going back to those years, and that cream was popular advertisement in Ebony magazine. How to bleach your skin so you could look whiter, at least convince yourself that you were looking whiter. So these are the things that Imam Muhammad's concepts wrapped up in us as we move through his father's concepts of emptying us out to create new men and women. The methodology was gradual, as was the prophets. The prophet didn't come on to the veteran Arabs or the pagan Arabs and just drop everything into their lap all in one day, not all in 1 year. They had habits that they need to break over a series of years. It took 23 years for the prophet to complete his message to them. But they didn't have all of the laws of Al-Islam in the first year and said, stop doing everything you're doing and do this. You know, they say when the commands came to not drink alcohol, the Muslims, you could see alcohol pouring down the street from the homes of the Muslims. They had to go pour it out. When we came into the Nation of Islam, you could see people taking out the pork out of their refrigerators and taking it out. One incident the man told us about it with his mother was when she was to take the pork out the house, she just couldn't bring herself to throwing that food away, so she gave it to a neighbor. And she was reprimanded, you weren't supposed to give it to anybody, just get rid of it. So these are the conditions that our people and us had to address, and these are the conditions that our Imam, following the leadership of his father, responded to and helped us to get through, survive, and progress. Imam Muhammad didn't direct us to any Muslim nation on the face of the earth. He didn't tell us to follow anybody else. He came directly to us with the Quran. He said, read the Quran. In the first years that he started us fasting, well, the first fast I think was in September, but the first year he started us fasting on the Ramadan world schedule, he told us, then you read the Quran in the 30 juz. You break it up into 30 pieces and you read some each year, each day, I'm sorry. One of the leaders from overseas came and they were having a reception. We were there and they were introducing what they do and everything. And so one of us got up and said, Brother Imam, when you told us we had to read the Quran in 30 days during Ramadan, this, and this. And the visitor basically said, you know, it's not a condition in Ramadan that you read the book in 30 days. And the Imam's response was, I didn't tell them what's a condition, I told them what they should do. You need to learn your own book for yourself. This is his way of directing us to the Quran. He didn't direct us to himself. He didn't say, follow IWDM Muhammad. Sometimes he said, don't follow IWDM Muhammad. He directed us to the Quran and to the Prophet and instructed us to learn the Arabic so that we can read for ourselves. You know, we had that Ahmadiyya Quran at one time. He said, if you're not careful, you don't know the Arabic, people can interject things that will take you away from your faith. And you know, it took a long time for us to stop saying the blue-eyed one. The Ahmadiyya Quran got us caught up and tried to justify, and did for some of us in our own psyche, justify why we were calling a white man the devil. And they would go get that Quran and put it, it says it right here. The blue-eyed one would not be accepted. And Imam Muhammad said that word is not blue, it's blurred. So something as simple as that cleared up 30, 40 years of misguidance. Imam Muhammad had a way of using words and putting emphasis on things in the Quran, but basically what it did was allow us to recognize each other. I can sit among Muslims now, African American Muslims that I may not know, but if I hear them cook something in a certain way, if I hear them recite in a certain way, I say, oh, they're from us. They're from our community. They've been exposed to Imam Muhammad's language. So it gives us a keen ear of who we're sitting among, and we can identify each other.
That's right.
Just by the language that Imam Muhammad left us with. You know, he told us to say, with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, not in the name of Allah. So if I hear someone say, with Allah's name, I say, that's one of us.
That's right. Yeah.
He gave whole lectures on why it should be with Allah's name, and that double dose of mercy from Allah. Our culture. Imam Muhammad gave us a whole new flag. Was not directing us to the immigrant, foreign, other communities and the way they live. When he created that flag, he told us, your flag should not be the battle cry of other Muslims. The Star and the Crescent was the flag that was created when the Muslims were fighting the Crusaders. The Crusaders had made their battle cry the cross, a specific Crusader's cross. That was the flag that they took with them into battle. The Muslims' response was the Star and Crescent flag, and it was the flag that they took with them into battle. Imam Muhammad said, we're not fighting the Crusaders. We need a flag that speaks to us. We need to know where the demarcation line is, let the old stuff be old, and understand, and say we are new people. When he created that flag, he said the flag is a book. The flag is a book, open wide. He said it proclaims, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Rasulullah. He said that's your declaration, that's your flag, that's your marching orders. That's what you live for and that's what you defend. He said his father told him about a dream that he had. And in the dream, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him, I keep seeing these repetition of L's. There's a lot of L's lined up. And Imam Muhammad heard the dream with his Islamically geared mind now. He heard La ilaha illallah. The L's are dominant. The L's are popping out in sound. So he created the flag based on his father's dream. And he tells us, really we should give the Honorable Elijah Muhammad the credit for the dream, although we give our Imam the credit for the ability to interpret the dream, so that we can use it in our own daily lives. So we have a flag, a distinct flag, that came out of our community, out of our leadership, that distinguishes us in our directive, our motivation, and what's important to us. Starting present makes nice rings. It's in our history, we respect that, but Imam Muhammad said, your marching orders are no longer defeating the Crusaders. Now you have to establish yourselves in a new life. If you want to read Imam Muhammad's explanation as he gave it on creating this new flag, there's a compilation of articles under NewAfricaRadio.com. And in those compilation of articles, NewAfricaRadio.com collected the centerfolds out of Muslim Journal of Imam Muhammad's lectures. And so this was the printed lecture in Muslim Journal on March 12, 1976. So if you go to NewAfricaRadio.com and look for March 12, 1976, you will get the essence of the Imam's lecture on that flag. Got 5 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
That's plus the 5 that the brother.
20 minutes each. 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
I'll talk faster.
No, 20 minutes. Reset.
And as we are thinking about our development, all praise is due to Allah. How old was Wallace Muhammad when he took hold of the leadership of his father's mighty nation of Islam? 42 years old. And he had been excommunicated 3 times before he was 42. Meaning he had been put out of the nation of Islam for teaching against what his father was teaching, and other people would come telling him, just like they tell on Malcolm, that they were telling him to try to get to sever his relationship with his father. Literally to the point that they put him out, the nation of Islam, and to be put out of the nation of Islam, I mean, all the members could not speak to him, they could not go to his aid, he could not receive any financial support from him, and that happened to him 3 times. And the last time he came back, and the officials' jealousy rose up again, and he went to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and said, Wallace is teaching that other stuff again. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was sitting at the table with his wife Clara, Wallace's mother, and said, Clara, isn't this what we've been looking for? Isn't this what we've been waiting on? And his announcement then was, Wallace can take that teaching and teach it anywhere. And the rest is that history. And so we knew from the teachings and from studying the old timers who were there then that something is going to come out of Wallace that we haven't seen before. And just understand that it's the transitioning from one womb into another womb. We used to call it the resurrection. We came out of the first resurrection into the second resurrection. And all of these people who came through that womb, those resurrections, were young folk. Wallace was lead at 41. Malcolm started Muhammad Speaks at 35. He was martyred at 39. Muhammad Ali was a champion at age 22. He changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali. Also at age 22. He was stripped of his title at age 25, but he never missed a beat. These were young folk. The Imam respected the followers of his father so much, however. I don't care what everybody else did, how young you were when you came in there, you respected those pioneers. He called them the most sincere then and the most sincere now. His father's assistants, old guys, the Imam Muhammad would go get them and tell them, you sit on the front row. And he referred to them, these are my stars. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's driver, Imam Muhammad would send a car over to the house, go pick up Brother Kareem and bring him to the mosque on Stone Alley. And they said, what is he supposed to do? He said, he's not supposed to do anything, just have him come over here and sit down. So he would go get old man Kareem that drove his father around, bring him to the office and just have him sit there. Whatever the Imam was doing, Brother Kareem was a witness to it. And his later years was just to be in the company of Imam Deputy Muhammad. You may remember when the Imam came into office at the National House, he had all pioneer brothers and some of the younger FOI too to come in for dinner, and Imam Deputy Muhammad served them. There were sisters in the back, they were cooking, they were on ready to serve, but he said no. He took the serving bowls and went to each of their plates, and he put the food on their plates. We use the name Ephraim Baha, right? A lot of us may not know who Ephraim Baha was. He was not a scholar. He was not a great man of means. I don't even know if Ephraim Baha had an education, but when it came to the Nation of Islam history, he was a pivotal part of Imam W.D. Muhammad's life and Sister Clara and Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad went to prison for draft evasion, even though he was too old for the draft, Ephraim Baha would travel through the alleys of Chicago with the bed of a truck, not with the truck, just with the bed of the truck, tie straps to it and put it on his shoulders and pull that bed through the alleys, collecting scrap iron, take it and sell it, and then take the money to Sister Clara to help her feed her family because their father, her husband, was locked up in prison unjustly. Another little sidebar. When Honorable Elijah Muhammad was locked up, people like Raymond Sharif, you know, remember Raymond Sharif? They said Raymond Sharif sent word to the, all of the FBI just stopped. They came to get Elijah Muhammad. He sent word to them and told them, just wait a minute, because we're coming to remember him, because we need to be locked up too, because we're not going to the draft. They would not allow Elijah Muhammad to be locked up by himself. So they all just turned themselves in. If he's going to prison, we're going to prison. And one of those was the father of Imam Daniel Kareem. This is just the environment, establishing the environment that we came out of and that we still should honor and respect. Imam Muhammad told us to go back and establish relationships with our Christian families. You know, as a nation of Islam, the nation was first. Family, other African American family was second. We basically had stopped our relationships with a lot of them. Imam Muhammad said, start going back to Thanksgiving dinners. And he said, if somebody put a little pork on your plate, don't get upset and mad and storm out. He said, just slide it to the side and enjoy your family. Reestablish your family ties. In the community that we grew up in the United States of America, he told us we had to make a decision. We can no longer straddle the fence. We know our oppression, we know our past history, we know how bad it was. He said, but one thing you got on your side that other people come here for is citizenship. He said, understand that your citizenship here is your birthright. And don't let anyone take that away from you. He said, know the value of your American citizenship. People take it all over the world and make extreme amount of money, have all kinds of doors open for them. He said, do not allow anyone to belittle or take away from you the power that you have in being an American citizen. He said, make it work for you. And then he said, while you're making it work for you, remember that you have a responsibility to it also. And we started having slogans like, your community, our responsibility. And Imam Muhammad had a series that he called Shared Freedom Space to help us navigate through that concept. We've been wrong. We were people that have been wrong, terribly wrong, discriminated against, killed. People in the South were killed just trying to stand up and go vote. Young guys. Shady Goodman and Swarner died at 20-some years old just trying to get people registered to vote in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Sacrifice. Medgar Evers, sacrifice. All these people who died trying to get us a right. Imam Muhammad said, we know all that. But remember, you now trying to get a share of your inheritance. You claim yours and don't let anybody take it away from you. Imam Muhammad stood up for the oppressed. The brother mentioned he was on that 1977 Hajj trip. I was too. Imam Muhammad in 1996 went to Palestine to meet with President Yasser Arafat. I was on that trip too. By the time we got out of that trip, Imam Muhammad had basically said, if I was a young guy, I would pick up arms and fight with the Palestinians. And he said it to the media. He didn't say it just to us, he said it publicly. After that, the Imam began to be picked up by peacekeeping groups. He even went into Chiapas, Mexico with a peacekeeping group. Now, in terms of our culture, he gave us culture. I'm going to be very quick, but I just want to give an example of the type of culture that he inspired in us and left with us. Anybody remember Dair Taha? The Invite Us to Truth. Dair wrote a song after the Imam tried to help us in our identity crisis, not leading us to the Arabs, trying to help us soon through being black Muslims, which we didn't name ourselves. That was Syria Lincoln. They wrote a book called Black Muslims, and then everybody else started calling us black Muslims. Elijah Muhammad called us the Lost Foundation of Islam in the West. Imam Muhammad taught us, you're Bilalians, still trying to help us understand that you don't have to worry about somebody calling you going to the Arab religion. You just say, you're not going to the Arab religion. People like Master Bilal embrace this religion. Your African connection can be found in the history of the early Muslims. After he said that and told us to call ourselves Bilalian, Sister Dair Taha wrote a song. I was Dair's roommate when I was like 20-some years old, coming into Chicago, and I just want to play it briefly. Mind you, this is copyrighted by her husband, so she's deceased, so don't sell it. Okay? Because he will come after you. Dair also played the flute on here. This is her original music, and she's singing.
The Honorable Wallace B. Muhammad has declared that we as so-called black people should call ourselves Bilalians. Bilal was a man who was great in the history of Islam. He was the first minister of Prophet Muhammad, may peace be on him, and the first to call the people to prayer. And like all great men of history, his greatness was proven by his ability to stand up in the face of opposition for what he believed. His belief that there is only one God. of a man called Bilal. Born of black skin and Abyssinian, he grew up a slave of Ethiopia land. The life of a slave was as cruel as could be. Bilal found no help from his misery, until one day he heard a voice say, "Aha, one God, aha, one God." It was the voice of the prophet Muhammad he heard. He was of the first to believe in the word. The prophet, he taught him the religion of truth. He forsake all the idols that he worshipped in youth. He taught him to bow to the one God and pray. His heart filled with joy when he heard Bilal say, so sweet and so proud, he cried it out loud, "Aha, one God, aha, one God." Bilal helped the prophet to teach all the rest, and of all of his converts, he was of the best. For converts were tortured in a very cruel way. They were scorched by the heat of the sun in midday. The masters deprived them of water for thirst, to make them reject God, who would be the first. Though hypocrites turned, Bilal he stood firm. He cried, "Aha, one God, aha, one God."
And you can find it online, Master Bilal by Gaia Taha. But again, remind you, her husband is watching. So if you post it too many times, he's going to have YouTube or whoever to take it back down. And my last comment, leave it with the imam, the leaders to grapple with, is one concern I have that a lot of people have really begun to address is that we're going back into blackness at an alarming rate. You know, we're getting back into color-coded language is what the imam told us to stay away from. He just told us, stop the color-coded language usage. You know, and that was the one thing he worked real hard on getting us away from, and that's why he actually introduced the term Bilalian, so that when we came towards the religion of Al-Islam, that some people are saying you'd be an Arab, he pointed to Bilal as a concept, ideal, to connect us to our Africanness, but we were always supposed to remove ourselves from blackism. And now, on social media, Facebook, even in articles, I'll have to almost rewrite every word to get all the blackness out. And to just refer to us now as African Americans, but it's really something that we should stress. That the now said colorism was a way to subdue us, to make us hold on to something inferior, even though we went through it. James Brown said loud and black and proud, we went through it, but we weren't supposed to stay there either. I just don't like
Now the imams are here.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear beloved Muslims, people, Assalamu alaikum. Indeed, an honor to be here before this esteemed gathering of believers first of all, and students of Imam Muhammad. The topic we've been given it's an easy topic, but not an easy topic, because it's very serious, and I know you wouldn't be here unless you took it very serious yourself. So some thoughts that I have on the importance of preserving the legacy and knowledge body of Imam IWDM Muhammad. We can see Imam Muhammad's legacy, that rich life that he lived, and that we are benefiting from. That is his legacy. We can't change the life that he lived, the life that Allah gave to him. We can't change that. However, his body knowledge belongs to humanity. Both his legacy and his body knowledge ought to be preserved and shared with humanity. However, his rich legacy is what he left behind. You leave a legacy, but it's what you leave behind you, right? Whereas his knowledge body is future tense. It's present but future tense. A beam of light or knowledge that is not behind us. His body knowledge is not behind us. It is in front of us. So preserving both his legacy and his body knowledge requires that we are sensitive to or conscious of preserving not only the legacy and the body knowledge, but we must be sensitive to and conscious of preserving the method of teaching this new body of knowledge. It's not just saying what the Imam said, but knowing the methodology and how he achieved to what is to be said. We have to learn not what he said only, but what was his thinking to get to that conclusion. It's one thing to say what the Imam said this and the Imam said that, but it is a greater achievement when we can say the reason and the context that the Imam said this and the Imam said that. If you don't have the context, then you can just turn on the tape recorder and just play what the Imam said. You can go to YouTube and see what the Imam said. So we as the first stewards, the caretakers, we are, right? The first ones. The stewards of Imam Muhammad's legacy and knowledge body, we must establish the disciplines, the didactics, the teaching method. We have to establish that. We are all responsible. No one is excused. We all are held accountable. A little side note. Ramadan session, year 95, we was in Athens, Georgia. Imam made a comment that the room just kind of froze for a while. I think I froze for a little bit longer. I was like, what did he just say? And what the Imam said was this: he was teaching, and he paused. And he said, he said, I give what I know freely. He said, there are learning imams around the world. They only answer you to the degree of the weight of your question. He said, I don't do that. He said, I just give freely. And then he said this. He said, if I did not do that, I deserve to go to hell. Okay, I'm telling you what, Ramadan session, 95, Athens, Georgia, so you can go and find out here for yourself. And then he paused and said it a second time. He said, if I don't do that, I deserve to go to hell. I mean, I don't know what he said for the next 5-10 minutes. And I'm like, wow, that's heavy. But it took me a few years later to realize that transfers. If it applies to him, it applies to me. It applies to you. So we are the first generation, the first stewards responsible. You can't leave the room now, you're already in there, right? Okay, we are responsible, and I'm talking to you to talk to your people, right? So when you go back home, let them know we are responsible. Allah put us here in this generation. We didn't choose to be born, we were to be born and to be in this situation, but Allah put us here because He prepared Imam Muhammad and He prepared you and I to be the first generation of stewards. We are accountable. So we must not just know what the Imam said, but what was the method of him saying it? What was his method of achieving that conclusion? So we can also develop that same the potentials in us, but the expression and live it out. We are obligated. We are bound by that. So as first generation stewards, men and women, who actually knew Imam Muhammad. We heard the Imam live. Some had dinner with him, right? Some traveled with him, knew him in the flesh and blood man, Wallace D. Muhammad. We are charged with not only knowing what he said, we are also responsible for knowing how to properly introduce his legacy and his knowledge body to an audience who never met the man. W.D. Muhammad. You know, I was at a high school a few years ago, and I had a display on this lawn. They were high school students. And I had a picture of famous Muslims. And they strained with it. Even when Muhammad Ali had on the suit, they didn't know who he was. They did get Ice Cube, and they did get somebody else, right? I'm like, and so in the hallway, she told me, she said, you know, I have to tell them who Bill Clinton is. I said, what? And I thought about it. Bill Clinton, after him was what, 8 years of Bush, right? 8 more years of Obama. That's 16 years. Where were they at? Where did you going at? Now let's translate that. When I was born, Eisenhower was president. I don't remember him. I remember JFK because he was killed, right? And of course, as you go on, Johnson and so on. So the more you have a life experience with that person, the more it is ingrained with us. Now, Imam Muhammad has been gone 15 years. There are grown people in our community who don't know him no more than I do Eisenhower. So how are we going to present Imam Muhammad to them? And they already looking at us. They're like, why y'all say his name so much? Right? They're saying that. If we love him because you all love him. We didn't know him. Because we do not present Imam Muhammad as a body of knowledge. If you say his name, it's good. It's good to say his name. But we have to be strategic, intentional. What's being done with the class is intentional. You are focusing on how to preserve this body of knowledge and to preserve this legacy. If we just keep presenting the man Wallace D. Muhammad, we're going to lose. We're going to lose. So we have to know how we have to present him as a body of knowledge. So we who spent 33 years studying Imam Muhammad's words, and since his physical death, another 15 years, continuing the discipline of studying his legacy and studying his knowledge body, we have a greater obligation to also categorize by subject matter. He told us this in Harvey on first Sunday. He said, you should take my teachings and categorize them and have subtitles So that if someone say, well, what did Imam Muhammad say about marriage? What did he say about divorce? What did he say about education? They can go to sources. That's what I believe Imam Bashir is doing and others. And you can put in about topic and they come up. We have that obligation to preserve. That's how you can preserve it. Put it in that kind of format to where it is easily accessible. Categorize each topic along with their corresponding background and the context in which Imam Muhammad said it. Okay, she's not there at the time. I can go along that one. Our system. So, okay. So, yes. So, but if someone is doing research on any topic or subject, then they should be able to go to a library that we created and find out what the Imam said about Palestine. What did he say about Christianity? Okay. And also have a cross-reference in that library. So it is this generation who actually lived the knowledge body. We lived it. Those going forward can read about it, but we actually lived it. Our lives were transformed in real lifetime. Yes. If we don't establish these disciplines, then our next generation and each succeeding generation will be further removed from the original source of Imam IWDM Muhammad. So we cannot stop now. We cannot say, well, we just going to let something happen. No, we have to be very intentional. Very intentional. So thoughts on the emergence of Imam Muhammad's Madhhab, I can say this. Never allow the knowledge body of Imam Muhammad to become a school of thought. Because thought is past tense. Right? If you say it's a school of what? Thinking. Thinking is present tense going forward. Thought is past tense. And every word is pregnant, right? You don't get pregnant going backwards, you get pregnant going forward. Last time I checked. She's back now. So, I'm not sure if we have stopped to concentrate on the legacy in the sense of the timeline of human thought. Going back to the caveman, going back to the bushman, right? The dark ages, the ages of enlightenment and all that. Do not see Imam Muhammad's comment not directly in line with that process going back to the caveman and the bushman. Don't see it out. It's right in line in his own time. Don't say he's a lost man. They're going to remove him out of the timeline of human advancement of thought and thinking. We're on time. Allah put us on time. We're in season. Allah put us in season. And to preserve the legacy of Imam Muhammad's knowledge, do not disconnect this great body of knowledge from anybody, Socrates, anybody. Do not divide it or make it separate. It is a blessing to all of them. As Muhammad was a blessing to all the people, Imam Muhammad's teachings on Muhammad is an extension of that blessing. And guess what? We are too. So I'm not sure if we have stopped to concentrate on the legacy in the sense of the timeline of human progress, namely the timeline of human thinking, socially, religiously, culturally, etc. So many of us, I know I do, I'm talking about myself. I got my library at home, I got my books all over the place, I got cassettes, I got some 8-tracks. I do. You know, right now, we have newspaper clippings and articles, but his legacy preservation needs more attention than what we got in our various homes. So, alhamdulillah, let us present Imam Muhammad as a body of knowledge. And that's not how we're going to preserve it. Now, we're going to honor him, the flesh and blood man, love him and miss him. Love him and miss him. But he told us, he said, when I'm gone, he said, forget about me and be about the work. He let us know, no personality worship. That's how I see it. That way, you can't worship a person, personality. That's shirk. But what Allah gave us through that methodology, let us preserve it. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Our last presenter, Dr. Mubashir.
Right, all the tall guys get the mics up, put it down a little bit. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Boy, I tell you, Sister Aisha had me choked up. Took us on the history ride. And I remember growing up as a young man, raising my children on that music, and all the visions and dreams that we had as young folks about what we were going to build, and the culture that we were going to, the new culture that we were going to establish with the new mind. Can't hear me? That's always my problem. Right. And then Imam McCallum gave us the big picture of it all, and touched on so many important points. Alhamdulillah. And Dr. Bashir, he started us off with something very important. He elaborated on the idea of the new creation. Sometimes people might wonder why we even think we need a new school of thought. But this is why it's important to study and know the knowledge body. Because this community, it has an origin. And the Imam talked about a destiny. And in between the origin and the destiny is a narrative, is a story. And he gave us everything we need to create and fulfill that story. But if we forget about that, then we lose our way. And so as a new creation, he told us look at everything with brand new eyes. Because that destruction that happened, see, it was a destruction, and I'm off script already. It was a destruction. But then something new was created during the plantation origin. A new plant was created, and it's been growing ever since. And so there is a lot that goes into that narrative, and if we lose it, then we just go back to what we were before. And that's why we can't lose it. So while they gave us the big macrocosm, I'm going to zero in a little bit on the microcosm, on this Madhhab idea. But before I can get into that, I want to add a context that I think is important. So I mentioned earlier that in our program, the very first lesson, progression we call it, that we teach in the knowledge body component is the vision and the mission of Imam. And in short, that vision is captured in what we see as the Hajj. And in that Hajj there's a great wealth of wisdom in there, but the big picture is humanity. All of humanity, all ethnicities, all religions, all cultures, the human being, together in one picture, moving in a direction around the house, a home, the family, the human family. This is the vision, the universal thinking that the Imam has taught us and directed us to. That's the big picture. The vision is for us, along with the rest of humanity, to bring in an earth, bring in a world where all human beings live the good life, the life we call paradise, where there's an opportunity, which you know in Arabia, the paradise is the Jannah, which is the garden. And the garden is a place of productivity, cultivation, and a place where we get good things to eat, physically, mentally, and spiritually. That's the big picture. This is the vision that Imam pointed to. Why? Because this is the vision Prophet Muhammad, prayers and peace be upon him, pointed to. Why? Because that is the vision that the Quran points us to. So this is the big vision. Now the mission. The mission is, how do we get there? What is the strategic moves that Imam Muhammad had to make to take the group out of which he was born and move it and position it in a situation that would be good, to be a nice womb of development for it, to then grow to its maturity and to its power, to its strength, so that it can then help the world, help push the world, help pull the world in the direction of the big vision. The development of a madhhab, or a school of thought, is just one aspect of that mission and strategy. It's an important one, but it is not the only one, because the community life encompasses the school of thought. It encompasses the madhhab. There are many other things that must go on and be developed for our community to reach its strength and then be able to do its job and make that impact in the world. But the school of thought is one of those strategies, although a very important one, and in fact an essential one. Now why is it strategically important? Because once it's established, it provides clarity for what we need to learn. It teaches us what we need to study and learn, the knowledge we need to master. It also provides clarity for what we need to teach to our next generations and teach to others. Once the school is established, it gives us these things. And why is this important? I just want to touch on something, give a sense of importance to this for us. As you know, we've been on this program for two years, and it's forcing us to create curriculum, to create the things that Imam Macau was talking about. You know, we got the light and the knowledge, but how do we then start to package this in a way where we can impart it and impregnate the minds of those that weren't around with the Imam and that didn't pay attention, like maybe some of us have. And we've gotten parts of it and he impregnated it in many of us to one degree or another, but then we have to get it, and now we have to figure out how do we impart it. And this is where the systematic study comes in. And I want to give one example of why this is critical. So we know in the Quran and in the Hadith, we read about many miraculous events. Many miraculous events. And we know that we have heard our Imam give an interpretation about these miraculous events in almost every instance. Now this presents certain challenges. If we don't know those interpretations, those explanations, then we're not going to be able to pass that on to anyone. That's one of the things that distinguished his work. So if we don't know it, then we can't pass it on. And if we can't pass it on, then what do we have in the next generation? We might have the name IWDM Muhammad, but we won't have IWDM Muhammad. If we don't know the Quranic support for his interpretations and explanations, then we will be afraid to teach it.
Right.
We will be hampered, hindered, because we are now integrated with a world of Muslims with many orientations. And if we don't understand the basis, the Quranic basis that we are standing upon, or that our Imam stood upon, then we will be hindered. We won't be comfortable just teaching it. And if some of us have that spirit, like I don't know and I don't care, but I'm going to say it, and we just say it. But then if you're questioned and you don't have an answer, then what happens? It goes back to personality. Well, they just like Imam Muhammad, but they don't know why he even says what he says. We just can't go by him because he was born in 1933. I think, right? He was born in 1933. Al-Islam has been here for 4,400 years. So we don't understand that. So this is why it becomes important for us to go into that body of knowledge and extract those principles and that information. And this is where the school comes from, right? Because the school develops a curriculum, it develops a process, and then it has to impart it to educate. Education is our #1 priority. So this is one of the reasons. Okay. And one last point about this. So then if we are unable, if we don't know really what his teachings are, and we don't understand the interpretations and the explanations, and we don't understand the Quranic principles upon which it stands, and so we make the conscious choice, well, look, I don't know, so then we go back to Egypt. You know, there's a story in the scriptures about the children of Israel after they made the Exodus, they got their freedom. They left Egypt. And they're looking for the promised land. And it says they wandered for 40 years. And they couldn't find it, so they got impatient. They're like, man, look at this stuff. This is supposed to be, you know, we're here at the place, and we had more in the past. We might as well go back to Egypt. Right? Why did they wander so long? The promise is that I got you out of that slavery. Now you're free to build the world that you want. And it took 40 years for them to realize, oh, shoot, well, I could build my promised land. And this is the case for us. We can build what we have, what we want. Otherwise, we end up crucifying our leader if we decide we're going to go back to Egypt. You know, the crucifixion is another lesson he taught. It just means that I create a fiction. It's like that burger they got out now, what's it called? The Impossible Burger. It looks like a cheeseburger, you know, they call it, but there's no burger meat in there at all. So we don't want to do that in our case. Okay, so this is one of the reasons why the school of thinking is important, and why, as a strategy, as part of the mission, it needs to be established. And so let's go forward. So as the others have been mentioning, I like that expression, school of thinking. I want to give credit to Hakeem, that's my brother's name, Hakeem from New York. Hakeem Sabri. That's where I first heard him use it. And I love that because of what even Cal said. It lets us know that we are in the process of developing a school of thought. It's not established yet. So we're on the path of doing this thinking. And so I love that. And don't be embarrassed to tell someone that's where we're at. We're working on it.
That's right.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Don't pretend it's already there. And hopefully when I finish, you'll see why. Okay. We're the new kid on the block.
That's right.
I remember in one Facebook debate, was a brother there, he was trying to debate with some of our brothers, and we're firing, we're criticizing in all kinds of ways, but not legitimate criticism. And the brother said, look, I understood Islam for 30 years a certain way. And then here you guys are coming and you're telling me that I'm thinking wrong in some ways. And you don't want me to ask any questions. And we think that others who have a long tradition of Islam, because they don't recognize and immediately recognize what we are offering, we get upset with them because they feel like they know it. Well, they've been having a certain thing for a long time. Right? So we're the new kid on the block. It's up to us to get ourselves together in such a way where then we can speak from the cradle and then continue to mature until we can see that, wow, that tree, when we first saw it, it was a little like that. Now look at it after time. Okay, so now let's quickly talk about, get a little clarity on this school of thought, Madhhab ID. So in Islam, there are many, many schools of thought, present and in the past. But we're going to, for simplification, I want to divide them into two types. They have the schools of theology, schools of Kalam, which is the study of how we understand how God communicates to us, how, the nature of God and how He did the Word of God, the exegesis of the Word of God. And then you have what we always hear, the Madhhab, which really is understood as the schools of law or Islamic jurisprudence or the fiqh, which means, when you look at the two, one deals with how you understand, how you think about your religious life, and the other one talks about how you practice your religious life. And there's a lot of variation and a lot of varieties in the Islamic community then. When we are talking usually about the language and logic of Imam Muhammad, we're explaining these things, we're often really touching on the theological part of our thought. How we see the world, how we understand Allah and what He has done in the world and His revelation and what it means and how that impacts on our life. And generally, from there, you get precepts, you get notions about how you practice your religion and what you understand. And that usually comes later because you need to understand your belief system, your thinking system, your methodology, and your approach to what God is telling us and teaching us. And then from there, you can just figure out how your behavior should conform or develop after that's established. So we are still, we have a wealth of knowledge that's out there from the Imam. But it's like a big sea, big ocean with all kinds of jewels and gems and diamonds and oil. But we still need the engineers to go in and start pulling these things out and then putting them in different ways. So this is, so when you are in dialogue with others about our own madhhab, they're usually looking for, okay, well, where's Imam Muhammad's book on fiqh? What's the rules of behavior? His rules of prayer? We don't have that yet. Although we have, in that body of knowledge, at least from my own research, I have seen enough to give us that guidance, that ability to extract that, produce it. But we don't have that yet. Just like, if someone walks up to you right now and says, okay, I want to study Imam Muhammad's commentary on the Quran, his tafsir. Where is that tafsir book? We can point them to some different materials, but we don't have that yet. Where we can just say, here, take this. We're getting there on that one, but we got a ways to go. So keep this in mind when we're interacting with Muslims outside of our thinking. We're not wrong when we say we have a school of thought, but most of the Muslim world is thinking about, when you say you have your own madhhab, what is your fiqh? What are your rules? What do you say on? And fiqh covers a lot of ways of life because it only means understanding, how you understand your religion and how you understand that you practice your religion. And I don't know, when we get to that part of development, it may not look exactly like this. And we're in the 21st century, and this is where, if you just say culture determines it, like we are a new culture, it's true, there's an impact of that, but it's the faqih, or the ones who have the understanding of, the Quran or that school's thinking, then they help with making decisions about, hey, like when during COVID, do you have to go to Jummah physically, or can you sit home and watch it online? These things are the kinds of topics that come up when it comes to the madhabs. Okay. One thing I do want you to know is that, I'm just one person, but I have walked out on the limb with a lot of things, a lot of concepts, and I have found those branches to be solid. And I strongly believe that everything we need, as our Imam told us, is in there. We just need to go in, those scholarly ones amongst us, they use a lot of their brain power in mastering the Islamic sciences. But we need our most scholarly people to also spend the time mastering that body of knowledge and extracting and building upon it as well. If you give all of your brain power to something else, then you see other things grow and develop, and then you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, well, I still look pretty bad. If you don't work on yourself, you're not going to look good. We won't look good. So we need our brain power to have faith that info is there. And this is my opinion, our brothers that went overseas and they mastered and got experience with the language and the history. My belief is that when they come back now, it's like the prophet of Aaron, right? Aaron was the one with the tongue because he could talk to the low and he could talk to the high, right? We call him the prophet that represents that culture, meaning you understand others of different persuasions, of different values. You come back with all of the knowledge you can get from overseas and that expertise, and then get the knowledge of Imam Muhammad as well and put those two together and be able to bridge that gap and articulate from us to them, the Muslim world, billions of people, and can speak their language and speak in the terms that they understand, but understand that they have to bring the mujaddid's knowledge to that. Oh, that would be a magnificent day, and that's a work, a wide awake field for such individuals who have that kind of knowledge. Oh, perfect time. 2 minutes or 5 or 25?
Seven.
I'm just
5 and 2.
5 and 2, 7 to go. Good, perfect time. 5 minutes, okay. Hard close for 5. That's good for 5. Because there's so much, we can't cover all the main points. Okay, I'm just going to put this out here as food for thought. The justifications for it, we go over it in the program, and now as a result of working in this program, the next 2 books that I write are going to be on the sources of our school of thinking and on the methodology, at least as far as I have developed it up to this point. And so one of those categories, I'm just going to mention, there are 9 sources that we identify. I'm not going to go into why we identify. I just want to tell you what they are as food for thought. Because typically, We know we have Quran, we have the life of the Prophet. Those are our bedrock sources. And we know if you understand Islamic jurisprudence, there are other criteria that are used to discuss madhhab or behavior of fiqh matters from which the scholars will derive ideas. But we're going to add, first and foremost in our approach is Allah Himself. Because Allah is with us. It's close to our jugular vein at all times. And everything we have depends on our relationship with Him and our connection to Him. Sometimes we can go looking for the answers everywhere, except right where Allah is. He's the most important source of guidance for us. The creation that Allah created is a source of guidance for us. Probably unique to our school to give it that kind of emphasis. But everything and every book in this world speaks about the creation. Can't get outside of the creation. The creation sets the tone, and it's what Allah made. And as Bashir said, and everything is connected there. The creation and its signs, its ayats, are guidance for us, and we must learn to read those ayats. And then, of course, our Quran, the revealed word of Allah, is a source of guidance for us. We know what that means and what that entails because it shows us how to navigate. Prophet Muhammad's example, we go into the uswa and how it connects to the sunnah, the relationship between the two. But that He is our source. He shows us what the common human being can do. And when you fall in love with what a human being can do, the way it's presented in the life of the Prophet and the way our Imam helps us perceive it, oh, you can't fall, you can't go back into any smaller box than the power of being a human being. The knowledge body of Imam IWDM Muhammad is a source of guidance for us. We have Quranic reasons for why, and we all know Allah can guide whom He pleases. And we know He talks about the ulul albab in the Quran, the people of penetrating insight and understanding. We believe Imam Muhammad is one of those. That's why we lean to his tafsir. And as well as Mujaddid, as other people have mentioned, the Imam didn't want to emphasize that, us to go out fighting with other Muslims about was he Mujaddid or not. But when you study, and we did this in our class, when you study other people who were accepted as Mujahdids, Imam Muhammad fits there in that category easily. And we believe, as we get our knowledge together, more and more people will see that. And it's important for us to know. Analytical thinking is another source. The intellect of the human being God gave us. It can be used wrong, but it can be used right. And it's very important. We don't minimize it. Islamic jurisprudence. Happily, in studying Islamic jurisprudence, we find that many of the principles that are relied upon fit very well in helping us to explain. 1 minute and I'm almost there. Perfect time to watch. Now, last two. Quran supported Italian, African American history, heritage. Why? There was an injustice that was done, the worst in the history of mankind, in the plantation and the slaves. We believe Allah would respond to that at some point and bring justice to that. The Imam spoke strongly about that. That justice, it has to be something that comes and has come to help us come back out of such a condition. And so we believe, and this is also consistent with some of the Islamic jurisprudence principles. Your culture and aspects of it that are very important do not contradict Islam. They are permissible as guidance and help. And lastly, Quran supported American heritage. It's a long story. But our sojourn transformed the greatest superpower in history from the imperialist, I know people will argue to some degree, but from what it was to a place where everybody from all over the world wants to come to. That was because of the journey of us for freedom, justice, and equality. So we had to, so there are things in the American culture, American history that are valid for us to consider. Thank you very much. May Allah bless us to continue to grow and stay positive, have faith, and keep growing. Assalamu alaikum.